Well, my name's Coach Bailey. Some of you may know me, some of you maybe meet me for the first time. I am the nutrition coach here. So we're going to talk about some nutrition, just a free workshop for you guys to take some information away to use it out there in the real world. So we'll talk about some basic information and the purpose of this workshop and what we want to do with this. So my goal for you all is to pretty much create a blueprint to handle the holidays, to handle the winter, handle whatever you're looking to get through. Maybe it's just to make some minor adjustments. Maybe you want to really improve, kind of go from average to good to great. Maybe you want to go from great to elite. So whatever your nutritional goals are, there's something in here that you can take away. So we're going to provide some general nutrition information, kind of cutting through the fads and all the latest and greatest, this new diet, that new diet, just teaching you guys some real, raw, valuable information. So first thing is, when we talk nutrition, we want to know kind of where does that sit on the pillar of fitness. So CrossFit's definition, this is the hierarchy of development. Ironically, like a lot of us kind of start from the top down. So when I was younger, I started with sports. Started at like 13 and 14. I did football, basketball, baseball, all the sports. Started doing some weightlifting, did some running and conditioning with it. Kind of just trickled my way backwards through this thing. Never really cared about nutrition. Like mom cooked me hamburger helper, I would scarf that down and just live like a teenager. That's kind of how we all lived. That's kind of how we were all introduced to it. We can't keep eating as teenagers as we're adults. Our bodies change, our organs change, things kind of develop. And so we need to kind of reverse that hierarchy, and nutrition is the foundation. So like I was saying, CrossFit has their definition. I fully agree with this. I believe that we have to build the nutrition as the base layer, because if we just rest our fitness on, not very strong nutritional components, it looks a little bit like this. It's got some cracks in the foundation. You ever drove with a cracked windshield? It's not very fun. You want to get that thing replaced pretty quickly. So same thing with your nutrition. You can be fit in the gym, but if you go home and you're skipping meals, you're fasting all day, or you're not eating enough protein, you're cutting out carbs, you're doing elimination things, like that's not going to be highly advantageous for you long term, because we're resting our fitness on a cracked foundation. So something to think about. Is a good visual for me when I'm like, I want to grind and go. Sometimes I forget that nutrition's the foundation. So good reminder there. It puts us into the scale of the sickness, wellness, and fitness continuum. So on the far left, you've got the sickness. Those are the people kind of hanging out in the hospital beds, begging to get out. Please get me healthier, happier. Maybe their diet looks a little bit like that far left corner: hot dogs, hamburgers, French fries, fair food, all that stuff. It's good in moderation. It tastes good, but it makes us feel kind of sick. You know what I mean? It doesn't make us feel the best. And so when we get somewhere in the wellness, we start measuring things like blood pressure, body fat, muscle mass, bone density, flexibility, cholesterol, all the biomarkers that you can get through a blood draw. Kind of puts us somewhere in this range. So I like to think that most of us are somewhere between wellness and fitness, somewhere in that part. Some of the elite coaches might be more here, some of us may be here, but most of us kind of sit right in the middle, a little bit further over. So having good nutrition, having good workout friends, good workouts here keeps pushing us towards the right. The elite fitness people, those are like the NFL players, the CrossFit Games athletes, all the professionals that you see. They have all this dialed in. Everything checks off green. Their diet looks like this. They probably have a chef, a dietitian. It's really hard to own all that, but we want to just make sure we kind of float here in the middle. So when we do get sick, when the cold comes around and it kind of bumps us back a little bit, our fitness and our health prevents us from going all the way up here and relying off the hospital. There's nothing wrong with it. We just don't want to get there. We want to control that. So that's a sickness, wellness, fitness continuum. Us coaches are always going to keep pushing you to the right. That's our goal. That's our job. So macronutrients, protein, carbs, and fats. We've all heard of these, right? Someone name some proteins off. Proteins. Anybody? Fish. Steak, eggs, chicken, venison. Anybody kill a deer this year? You got some? That's the same. That counts, right? Your grandson did? Congrats. What was that, Tammy? Yep, cottage cheese, dairy. Yeah, exactly. The good stuff. Yep, those are protein. What are some carbs? What do we think of carbohydrates? What are some, what comes to mind? Pasta, sweet potatoes, yum. What else? Veggies, yeah, squash. Love it, love it. You're making me hungry. Sourdough, ooh, got to be careful with the bread sometimes. I love it. Fats, what do we think of fats? Avocado, nuts and seeds, yep. Anything else? Oils, exactly, yep. Those are all macronutrients. What was that? Ice cream, yeah. There's a lot of fat in that. Try to keep it on the natural food circle here. I've got a nice natural food circle. If it grew from the ground or kind of stomped on the ground, we try to want to eat that. So you'll hear me say that a few times. We're going to dive into protein. It's the building blocks for muscle recovery, muscle growth. So we sometimes think we just kill ourselves in the gym, our muscles are going to grow. We actually tear and break them down when we're in here. So, well, I've heard everybody's shoulders are really sore because mine are. You know why? Because we've tore the muscles up in there and we need protein to go back and build it up for us so that we're not as sore, we can recover and feel good and build the strength to keep going. So the building blocks for muscle recovery, muscle growth, you guys mentioned meat, nuts, seeds, beans as well. So black beans have a good source of protein. My recommendation that I've read based on some research is 1 gram per pound of body weight is ideal. Your ideal weight. So if I am a 200-pound individual and I want to be 180 pounds, I would try to shoot for somewhere in that 180 gram-ish of protein. That's a lot of protein. My wallet doesn't like that because I'm always spending meat on protein, but my body enjoys it. I want to be rich in health. That's what I want to be rich in. So having enough protein is going to allow me, because I do 4 to 5 workouts a week, I'm here sweating, just like you guys are. You see me in the classes. So I got to make sure that I get enough protein for me. And I break that down into 3, maybe 4 meals. And each meal has somewhere around 25 to 30 grams of protein. That's a chicken breast. That's 4 to 5 ounces of beef, 4 to 5 ounces of fish. It's expensive, but it is what my body needs. I do have protein powders and protein bars and cookies and all that stuff. They have their place, but it cannot be the only source. So if you're like, I got 80 gram of protein today, but I had, a Ben and Larry's cookie that's got 40 grams, and then I had a Jocko shake as well. That's not the highest quality sources of protein. It's efficient on your wallet, but is it really the best sources of protein for you? I don't know. Depends on your body. I know my body loves this stuff in the top right corner. So you guys mentioned cheese, eggs, lean meats, fish, all that healthy stuff. Usually you got to cook it. It takes some time, but like you said, do you want to be rich in health or do you want to kind of just cut the corners and hit the numbers? So think about that. Your snacks, those are great snacks. Like the protein powders are snacks. Those are great snacks to have. The protein bars and cookies, the jerky sticks, awesome. Somewhere around that 15 to 20 grams of protein is ideal. 2 or 3 of those is also ideal. Just try not to have too many snacks. You don't want to have more snacks than you have meals. So if you're like a snacker, maybe you need to take some time to really make a meal. Try to make it. We're going to roll on through carbs. Carbs aren't your enemy, they're your friends. Everybody's like, I'm going to cut all the carbs out and quit eating them and just feel better. That's not going to work. I wish it did. Because carbs is the fuel for your body. So it goes in there, fills those muscles up, makes them feel good to do short activities. So like the weightlifting we do, the running, the biking, the sprinting, all those things that we like to do, they come in 3 different forms. So there's starches. Have people heard of starches before? You've probably heard of fiber and you've heard of sugars. So like glucose, those have carbohydrates in them as well. So fruit has carbs, vegetables, beans and grains. There's a lot of different sources that have carbs. They're your friend, I promise. Where they get a little dicey is when we start eating too many carbs for what our body is doing. So we have glucose, which is sugar, enters through your body through food. It's then converted into glycogen, which stores in your muscles and your liver. And then that's what we use for fuel. So think of glycogen as gas. That's the best way to put it. You guys work here, you're turning your V6s into Hemi, engines. You guys are going to be loud and proud and moving quick and fast. You don't want to put cheap fuel in there. So carbs are good fuel when we want to have good sources. So up here, we've got all kinds of different sources. We've got fruits, grains, beans, a couple different vegetables up there. But carbs are your friends, I promise. Any questions on carbs? There's a saying that was popular back in the day that fat equals fat. Like the more fat you eat, the more fat you put on. And unfortunately, that is not true. So fat is also a second source of fuel. So it's more for the long distance stuff. So getting through the day, getting through sleep, cellular function, doing, long walks, long runs, long bike cycles, whatever you're doing, long distance or long duration, your fat starts to take over and we use that as a fuel source. Keeps us insulated and it helps protect our organs as well. So if we cut fat out of our diet, people kind of shrink into nothing, and you might be in ketosis, you might be, really, really low body fat percentage, and you may look good, but you don't feel good. And I've been there before where it's super, super lean. You got to have some fat for your organs, for your muscles, for your tendons, for your ligaments, so that we can keep those moving and not getting injured in here. So fat is super, super important when it comes to recovery because it helps with all that cellular stuff, and it can be easily overconsumed because we have a couple of different fats, saturated and unsaturated fats. So the difference between those, saturated or solid. So I think saturated, the S in saturated is solid, unsaturated are liquid. So when you think of a liquid fat or when you think of a solid fat, what comes to mind? Anybody think of anything? What was that? Crisco? Crisco, yeah. Butter. What else? Coconut oil, yeah. Any others? What are some unsaturated ones? Some that are liquid at room temperature. What comes to mind? Olive oil. What was that? Grapeseed? Yep. Avocado, grapeseed oil, all those other oils. Yep, exactly. Beef tallow could be a saturated one as well. The only fats that I really, really don't care to include are trans fats. Has anybody heard of trans fats before? Those are not going to be your friend. They usually are going to increase that heart disease. So the cholesterol buildup in the arteries, we don't want the doctor to go in there and rearrange your plumbing. So make sure that we're keeping those trans fats to a minimal because they're found in the fried foods. You go down this strip, on every corner there's a fast food chain. There's something there, and it's going to be full of this stuff, unfortunately. The baked goods, all that stuff that tastes good and makes you feel good for a minute, it's got all that bad stuff in it, unfortunately. And it's got some seed oils in there, which you guys can do your research on, but I've just found that those are super, super ultra processed, and they're just not going to be beneficial in high doses. So some might be okay, but a lot might be a little concerning. We might go back and see some of those biomarkers change. Questions? What should I eat, coach? Can you cook it for me? Can you just make me eat it and cram it down my throat? I wish. Megan cooks us some really good foods, but sometimes we got to cook it ourselves. So what do we eat? I try to tell people eat whole food, minimally processed stuff. Usually it grew from the ground like a vegetable or a fruit and popped right off, and you pick it, you cut it, and bam, there it is. You can eat it. Or usually it lived on the ground. So it stomped on the ground, was an animal. Hopefully it felt the sunlight. Has a mom. Yeah, it wasn't created in a lab, didn't live in a factory, didn't have to survive and just, fight for elbow room. I like to hope that the animals that I eat were free range, have a healthy life. Man, it's a little bit more expensive when you pay for those, but exactly what I was mentioning earlier. Do you want to be rich in health, or do you want to have some easier substitutes? So organic, non-organic, that's okay. Whatever you want to do, just try to make sure that it is something whole food, minimally processed, and try to live a decent life. Back to that classic definition of eating meat and vegetables, some fruits, some little starch, some nuts and seeds, and just making it to these three macronutrients, the protein, carbs, and fats. If we do that, we should be able to cover most of the spectrum for our nutrition. So quality foods into quantity. So I'm gonna hand around some plates here. I'm gonna go from this side. Yep. And then I'm gonna start with Kinsey. You guys just take a look at this. You can pass it around and be like, what the hell does he want me to do with this? I want you to look at it. How much should I eat? This is the plate method. First thing people notice, that is a ton of vegetables. How am I gonna eat that many? Well, you don't have to eat half the plate, but start trying to make, a third of the plate, maybe or half the plate. Try to start somewhere. Maybe you just want to get some vegetables on your plate. Maybe you're like, I'm a vegetable hater. Maybe I need to try to eat some more. And that can look like a lot of different things. So you can have some greens. Yeah, you can set that up here when you're done. You have some greens on there, half the plate. That could be asparagus. That could be some broccoli. That could be maybe even carrots. But you don't have to discriminate on your vegetables. They can be colorful. Eat seasonal, eat colorful. You ever heard of Eat the Rainbow before? Eat the Rainbow, yeah. They told me that like in 8th grade. So I'm still trying to live that out today. That looks like 3 to 5 meals for me, might be 3 meals for you. Make sure each meal has the protein content in there. No need to eat some food without protein because we want to make sure when we're breaking our muscles down here, we're going to replenish it and get that muscle growth. 1 to 2 snacks, like I mentioned, with protein as well. So that could be a banana with some cottage cheese and a handful of nuts. Could be a banana and some peanut butter, maybe pre-workout. Maybe I go home and have a protein shake with some